Yes. All right, well, let's go ahead and begin. I want to call this meeting of the Long-Term Finance Planning Committee. I always wanted to check the heading there to make sure I say these things right. It is March 1st, 2024. We are in the HR Council Conference Room, and we've got some folks here in person. We've got Councilor McKim, myself, Trent Deckard, and then Councilor Hawk is with us remote, as is some of our staff and other guests here in county officials and staff. And so we've got an agenda before us today. I want to see if counselors wanted to add anything else to this agenda beyond what we have. So we'll go to the adoption of the agenda. Is this okay with everybody?
Yep, it's pretty generic.
Pretty generic. Good. That leads to good generic discussion, which leads to good non-generic policy.
Mr. Garrett has.
Yeah, he's got some great stuff. So we're going to move on to item number 3, and we are so fortunate to have Mr. Garritas here. You're one of the most clamored for speakers that comes before council, and
well, thank you.
not everybody can say that. Not everybody wants to, and so we want to welcome you. And I noticed that you've got some agenda items you kind of wanted to run through, and I'm going to pass this to you if councilors are good.
Can someone post it or bring it up so that
I can do that real quick.
Marty, I expected you to have your smiling face here.
I'm so sorry. Hopefully next time.
Okay, because I was dying to see you. So and so maybe they can. So I wrote out, or I've got about 5 or 6, maybe even more than that, bulleted points that I wanted to go over and kind of and give you the world according to Greg as I see it across the state of Indiana, because we're doing actually a record number of counties now. A couple of them got bad advice, so they called us. And so I like to say, be careful of the advice you seek and get, because sometimes it's important to see the big picture, not the really small picture. So one of the main item on the top of this agenda is number 1, the late breaking news as of yesterday. Jeff did such a fine job on the conference call with Standard & Poor's. They believed you. I know that's hard to understand. Most juries don't. This jury did. And so we were able to achieve a AA plus, or AA from the AA minus. I'm sorry, I'm going to get us to a AA plus next. But so that's very, very significant. So we got an uptick. In today's times, that's kind of tough. That's really tough because there's so much unknown out there, and you really do need to read the report. And we said Jeff's got a copy, and so we'll get it out to all of you. But it's very, very important. And one of the 2 issues they talked about in this report, 2 issues we will likely be keeping an eye on over the next 2 years, and this will set our stage, are the county's ability to have a sustainable afford a budget that includes an 8.5% annual compensation increase on average. So the sustaining the increases that you've given, sustaining what you may be giving in 25 and 26 and 27. Remember, our financials go out for 3 years, our projections. And so that's very, very important. Also, then they talk, assuming the increases that will likely take effect and the impact of the Bloomington annexation plan. So Jeff kind of gave us a legal update on the annexation plan, and I guess maybe Jeff, do you want to mention something there?
Well, there are 2 different cases. I think everybody knows that. The case with the citizen group, that goes to trial probably in April, March, April, I believe the April. And then the other one is, I think they've got a hearing. We had a hearing scheduled on the summary judgment motion, which is the case, right? The question in that one is whether the state statute's constitutional or not. We had a summary judgment scheduled, and then unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on who you are, the judge in the case is the spouse of an attorney that we recently hired. And so she's working through whether she has to recuse herself or not, and if so, getting a new judge, which may set it back months. But I would expect resolution, at least initial resolution pending appeals and things like that, to be known for those two issues by midsummer.
So do we still think that, I mean, obviously we can't predict what's going to happen with the courts, but do the impact dates of the annexation get pushed out, or do they say what is it, 2025 for circuit breaker and 2026 for lit? Is that still likely?
That was our initial assumption.
So I think that is the assumption I would work on. I don't know what the judge would do. Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of in their hands.
Okay, but we can work on that as a baseline assumption.
And I think, in my mind, the constitutional question is the constitutional question. My opinion is on whether it's valid or not. But the other one is a little more gray, right? Because it's a lot more complex. There's a lot more factors into it. So that one is kind of the one that there's a lot more uncertainty about. One's one question, the other is really one question, but there's area of aspects of where it's working, which is, I would expect both those decisions to come fairly close, because I think it's going to take the judge a lot longer time to rule on the citizens. I think they've got to weigh a lot more factors, a lot more. The other one's more of a pure question of law that the statutes, given the arguments, should be able to make a conclusion quicker than a week long.
Jeff Cockrell, are you speaking into the mic or just sitting back and being comfortable, because it's hard to hear?
Well, I am speaking in a normal tone. The mic is in the middle of the room. Well,
They will want to hear from me last, trust me.
okay. But I was just,
Well, everything you have to say, I'm hoping was, I can go back in the recording and pick it up. But I know that what you had to say there was something I really wanted to hear. So.
I said essentially that I expect the processes as far as the trial level and the initial court decisions to be forthcoming both sometime this summer. And then there's going to likely be an appeals process. And I don't know, I don't know any way to gauge that other than when the last constitutional question went through for the city of Bloomington, they started that challenge in 17, and it wasn't concluded until through the appeals process through 21. So everything I just said about when the trial stuff comes is, and there's likely going to be an appeal, and that appeals process changes that time window a lot.
Right. Thank you.
So to go back to those two factors, the first factor was the compensation.
Sustaining the compensation
Now,
in the future.
I mean, I can't imagine, I mean, I hate to say this to employees, but I can't imagine supporting like 8.5% a year in perpetuity. This was to some degree to catch up with inflation, but inflation has certainly not been 8.5% over the past year.
There's no way you could do a perpetual 8.5%.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna, given that it's March 1, I'm gonna set the stage for where we're going to go here. And so, and bring up a couple important points as we go through this. And so you're right. And they kind of couched it in the terms of they were thinking you were going to do this in the future. And that's not correct. That's kind of how they kind of took it. So the answer is, you know, as we move forward with any other type of financing, they do say in here that they don't believe anything will change in the next 2 years. One of the things they say in the downward scenario, we could lower, and Marty, I hope you can hear me. Usually people don't have.
Yes, I can. I'm hanging on.
Okay, great. We could lower the rating if the economic slowdown, additional net debt needs, or budgetary pressures result in material decrease in counties' current available cash balances. Okay, so that's important. Now remember, when we talk county balances, we talk the liquidity funds. And when you say, Greg, please define what you mean by liquidity funds. That would not be ARPA. That would be general fund. That would not be cum capital fund, really. It would be more like food and beverage. It would be, you know, those operating health funds and things like that. They're all showing up on this nice little cash fund report. Okay, and that I have underlined: health, public safety, lit. We've got to define, I'm telling you, it's very important as we go forward. One of the liquidity funds can also be considered the rainy day fund. We really need to define how we're using that. I think we saw in last year, 2023, correct me if I'm wrong, but you took 1 million out of it, okay? And so you really should define, and the standard operating procedure on rainy day fund, it should be your last bottom dollar. It should be the last one you go to. Okay? And they'll want to hear from council how you want to define it. And ultimately, that probably needs to make its way in a resolution. Okay? Because it is important for us all, as your financial advisor, I've got to also know how you define it or want to define it. I'll tell you how we define it in every other place: last bottom dollar. We don't go there for any operating expenses. I like what we did that one time when we went there for the airport, paid that debt off. That was a one-time expense, but I don't know if we haven't had time to go in and see what it was spent on last year. Does anybody know?
Yeah, it was matched for paving, for community crossing. So it was a 2-to-1, you know, or 100% match.
Yeah. So someone join us or okay.
It's the
Question, Marty?
What?
Have a
No,
question?
I can just add there that we have the right or the opportunity to put in so much of our revenue up to, I think it's 10% over into the rainy day, and which I think we've been doing to build that up. So we'd have the community matching dollars, et cetera. Should we continue to try to move dollars over into rainy day?
So I will answer that point blank, yes. You know, that with the perception of, or with the point of, you're going to define how you're going to use it.
Okay.
I think those go hand in hand.
Do you have a draft resolution or policy that we should use as a model?
I could sure probably come up with one.
I think Charlie sent
Yeah.
us.
You've got one. Okay.
I'll double check, but I'm pretty sure he has.
Yeah.
And I've got a question for Greg, if you guys don't mind. I guess in my mind,
Witnesses prepared for cross-examination.
well, in my mind, this kind of dovetails into what we've talked about quite a bit, which are fund balance policies for each of the funds, right? So, you know, I'm sitting in the ratings call, and if I can pull out a piece of paper that says we want our rainy day fund balance minimum to be equal to whatever, right? And then it goes, then they ask me, why do we spend this $1 million on this community crossing? I could say, well, we looked at our policy for our minimum fund balance, and so therefore we were above that. And so when we're above that, maybe the whatever fund we're talking about has a different policy to it than when we're at that. Like the bottom, like if you want 25% of your annual revenue to be in your rainy day fund, that's your minimum balance. And once you get over that, then you will explore using it for these one-time grant match fund possibilities. That's better than what we have now, right? Which we have no explanation as to why we make these decisions in any kind of policy.
So we gave you an example of a target fund balance. And so, you know, that's been something I've been talking to you all about for quite a while.
Yes.
And we really need to establish that. And then Marty, that kind of establishes our standard of transferring and where we are. Does that make sense?
Right. And also, part of the rule is on that, I think it's still in place, that it takes more than a simple majority to get it out of there.
We do, yeah, that's our local, our own ordinance
Oh,
requires
that'd be good to add.
requires it.
To the resolution.
Yeah,
Yes.
requires
Yeah,
5 votes, I think.
It's strong.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Go ahead.
okay, so, I mean, let's talk target fund balance.
Okay.
You know, we essentially have this, you know, we have the frozen levy where we can move levy between those funds. I guess one question is,
Now, wait a minute, explain let me make sure I'm on your page.
the civil max.
Explain what you mean.
Okay, so the civil max levy,
Okay.
we have
We've
this.
got a maximum levy.
That's general health,
Yes.
election, aviation, reassessment, and cum bridge.
And let's talk in numbers, it's 20, let's say it's 30 million, 29.8. So 30 million, go ahead.
So I guess the question is, should we essentially treat, and this is effectively what we've been doing, treat the general fund as where we want to maintain as a savings account essentially, and we never maintain more than what we need to pay our current bills in those other funds.
Yes, within reason. I highly agree with you, and I call that migration of the levy. Okay, so you should strategically each and every year migrate your levy, your maximum levy, to the funds in which you believe it's needed. Okay,
Which is really
not.
do.
Yeah, and not do, but you do.
Yeah.
And so what we like to do is you go in and you set it up each and every year based upon the Form 4B, you know, that budget Form 4B, and you don't overfund it. Was there a question?
Right. I agree with that.
And so, yeah.
I have, on that, Greg, what I'd like to say is, I hope that we wouldn't like 1 year reduce it way down because in something other than general and pull it over in general and then think we've got that sustaining dollars in general when the next year or year thereafter, we have to return a rather large sum to build up the ones that we took it from. And you've already put in place a employee salaries that we have to sustain in the general. And so I know we've got enough money, we can play with it for a while, but that's not always going to be the case.
And health is a really good example. We put
Yes.
no levy into health this year.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I would have done that. So Marty, let me say, I agree with you on you do not do major swings. You do strategic migration each and every year as it is needed. Now, what I did in my other counties is I took away from health because the health benefits we're getting, the additional benefits we're getting, but I still left some levy, okay? Because I don't want it to be
no levy.
catch up. Yeah, no, I've got it right in front of me, and I see it. They got no levy, and so I probably would have still put, 100,000, 200,000, something like that. Now, I reserve that comment based upon, I have not researched the levy in the last 5 years. Usually in that health fund, I don't recall it off the top of my head. And so, didn't prepare for that. But that's what we look at in the sustainability when we put that together. So, yes, that's important. So what we did is we put together an example, and Jeff, you got this, an example of, I call it target cash balance. We're not going to call it minimum balances because it's not, because what's going to happen is 500 people are going to read this and they're going to define it differently. Okay? So it's a target fund balance, meaning that we can go over, we can go under, or we can go at it. Okay? If we go below it, then there may be a reason. Okay? If we go above it, we know also financial times may be changing, and I'm going to speak to those a little bit, that will, may want to keep it a little higher and then kind of go from there. So we put together, and I'll send this around, but Jeff will have it, and these are just, for instance, in the general fund, I put 10. Edit, I put 2 million. Kim Capital, we put 1 million. Rainy day, we put 8.5. So this is round one of several rounds to go, but this will give you something to kind of look at, digest, think about, and obviously this is just a ballpark that we put together. You could minimize this if you want and not have as many, or you could put a few more. I wouldn't overdo it though. These are what I kind of call the liquidity funds.
Yeah, no, this makes sense. Now, when you talk about, I guess I could probably read the whole thing, but is that end of the year balance, or does that mean the balance will never during the year?
No, I'm going to say end of the year because, as you know, as well as I do, ebbs and tide occur for 12 months out of the year.
Yeah, it's good to have a fixed point in time that we measure it from. So,
we can't do it in May, because you probably haven't settled until June.
Right.
And so, and so, yeah, these are more looking at it when we sit down like this and say, where have we been over the last year? And where are we going for this year? And where do we want to go for the next 3 years?
And it's the number that's on the 4B for the operating.
Exactly.
Balance, so.
Exactly. Okay. That's going to be if the newest version of Form 4B, although Fred left DLGF, so I doubt new version of Gateway will come out. But if it does, and it's lower than last year, that fund balance, it'll be red. It'll say, it'll stand out and say, Houston, you may have a problem.
So you mean we would actually put in our targets there, or?
No, well, that would be great, but you would try to fund to your target or above. Yeah. Okay, so that's kind of, so a couple things we want to do before we ever would do any more debt and before we'd ever go back to a rating agency is, number one, I would suggest the target fund resolution, just like I have. Number two, an investment policy. And I think that's pretty simple, and I think your treasurer has one. It may be wanted to be dusted off a little bit, but it's basically that they follow the state law
and our Board of Finance does that annually.
Yes.
So we have that.
Yeah.
Okay.
5-year capital improvement plan. That is the one that I'm, we came up with it for Standard & Poor's, but we came up with it. These documents, I'm saying the minute Standard & Poor's calls next year even and says, we wanted to monitor your credit, can we have these 5 documents? You've shipped them out, okay? And they're on their way. They're not being built as when they ask for it, okay?
And do the commissioners have one now?
Do the commissioners have one now? A formal one, maybe.
An informal, I don't know. We answered the questions, right?
Did you make it up as you read?
We answered them, right? It wasn't like we made stuff up, but
it's, you go back to anything, the old adage that if it's not written down, you don't have a plan.
Right.
And it would be good to have that publicly available for every elected official to know and readily hear. This is what.
And updated every year.
Yeah.
Because some things come off, some things go on. And just this in Brown County last week, And when they had gotten some bad advice, so they changed financial advisors. And so I said, look, guys, you got to come up with a 5-year capital improvement plan. You don't put your copiers on there. You put things that are, of substance. And we may want to keep roads separate than buildings and things like that. But we have in Monroe County, there is no doubt we have addressed our assets in a very good way. I don't think we've got depreciating, falling assets like, believe it or not, some counties do.
Oh, yeah.
They're falling on their head, literally off the courthouse. And so, you don't want that. I went back up to Tippecanoe County and they said, that roof we worked on 10 years ago, we would probably have to work on it again. Okay, because you got to keep up on those assets. And by us doing those GEO bonds, we've really been able to do that.
Well, and I
Do
think
that well.
Lisa in the highway department has always done a really good job with the roads. And so they've got
And they do have to have.
They have an asset plan. Parks, I believe, has a plan, and these are the kind of things we pulled together. We have I think we did something with, because Richard keeps and David Gardner keep the maintenance stuff for the buildings and things. So the information is kind of there. I'm not sure I would call what we get with Richard and that a capital improvement plan as opposed to a maintenance plan, right? Which is somewhat different, but having the maintenance plan is very helpful.
So Marty, comments on some of that. I want to make sure we cover you.
Right. When you're talking about the capital improvements plan, generally, like when you're managing rentals, you look at how old the roofs are in each of the rentals. You look at how old the HVAC is, and the major things that you have to make sure that you're covering. And so, as long as we cover that, and then you put in place if there is a plan to add on to any of those buildings of the sort, or how those buildings might be used. But yes, I think if we don't do that, I pushed hard to get that done for the convention center
Sure.
years ago, to make sure that we had dollars put back for that roof, and for paving, parking needs, so forth, too, because that's a very expensive process.
And Marty touched on HVAC, and I'm literally doing a half a dozen HVAC projects. They're over $1 million, and the timeline is 22 to 36 months.
Wow.
So if you've got any of them that are hiccuping, I got one jail that has 11 of them, and we're going to try and get rid of. We're going to do one for $1 million now, and so those are really extremely expensive and very, very long lead times.
Yeah, our existing convention center has some.
And we're in the process of going through for that building. We did most of the rest of the buildings in the last 10 years. So we should be pretty good with our HVAC.
So to stay on task here, that was a bullet point halfway down there. And then I talked about defining a rainy day fund, how that will be used. So, and kind of covered the upgrading in the rating, and we'll get you a copy of it. So now let's kind of talk about where we ended the year really nicely. I like where we ended up. We were up. So let's talk about where we're kind of going. Okay. Your interest income, I put it right here on this sheet. General fund got 5.2 million. So I had one county the other day that had 4. I got another county that had 6. You were right in the middle of them at 5. Okay. This 5 million that you received in 2023, had you not received it, your balance would have went down. Okay. So guess what? That 5 million is really valuable dollars. Now, my assumption is there's one fund in here in the fund report that's got 22 million in it, and it's your ARPA fund, which you've designated, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But it is yielding you interest income, and my assumption is that is going back into the general fund.
It
Correct?
is. It is.
And
Very
so-
big concern, very big concern that we look in the future, we're not going to have those dollars to reinvest, as well as that edit dollars. Where is that, the revenue for the edit dollars for income? Where's that setting?
So I'm going there. So let me talk about now let me switch a little gear. The boys and girls downtown. Okay, downtown Indianapolis. I call them the boys and girls downtown Indianapolis. We got to get the boys and girls out of downtown Indianapolis out of there. Okay. Because I don't know if you've noticed that DLGF bill, but it's the Christmas tree of all Christmas trees. And so that bill, I keep saying, let's see, they're supposed to go home, what, 11 or March 8th, Jeff? So at March 7th, 11:59, I always say that 11:59 witching minute, will be very, very important, and will we may live or die by some of that. Okay, so how might we live or die by some of that? I sat down with Representative Jeff Thompson about 2 weeks ago, had lunch with him, and said, what's going on? And everything is going on. Okay, so one of the things I think is important as we go forward, there's going to be some redefining of TIF probably. The future of income taxes is going to be very, very interesting. I don't think it'll be addressed at 11:59 this year. Well, here's what's happening, and I'm assuming you don't know this, but in Hamilton County, they now are setting up virtual fencing. Virtual fencing through the Indiana Department of Revenue is happening in Westfield, Indiana. We're able to determine all the residents of Westfield, Indiana, regardless of whether they live in Westfield, regardless of whether their zip code's Carmel, regardless of whether they're in the county. That's pretty significant, okay? And Jeff said that's actually really working out this year and is a test case. Now, what does that mean? That doesn't mean your edit's going to change yet. What it will mean, and I talked to Representative Thompson, and I said, oh my God, are we going to go back and remodel all of the prior edits and all that based upon virtual fencing that will probably occur in 2 years from now? You see where I'm going, Marty?
Virtual fencing, are you trying to come up with the population in each of the areas? Is that what you're doing?
We're trying to come up with the taxpayer. Trent may live in the county, but we're going to verify that he lives in the county and he doesn't live in the city of Bloomington.
And so we can have different income tax rates for different jurisdictions.
Right.
Okay, so where we're heading is if you put up a virtual fence around in Monroe County, in Bloomington, okay, and finally figure out exactly who Bloomington taxpayers are and start allocating income taxes based upon that.
Yes.
Yeah, we're talking a huge fish net that's going to probably catch a shark or two. Okay, and it's going to be tough. So the theory at this point in time is that virtual offense will affect all new income taxes, not current pre-existing. And I'm holding my breath on that one. Okay.
You mean new taxpayers coming in?
No, new taxes that are established. So for example, the EDIT, remember the EDIT was determined by the city council for the whole county, but in the future, they could adopt a new EDIT that would only apply to, or new,
because it's shared with the maximum, the levy of property taxes, that's how it's allocated in the Coet County. And so what I'm telling you is that brick wall is coming to a theater near you, okay? I don't think it will impact strategically our current income taxes, but I'm guaranteeing you, as soon as they get the test case done in Hamilton County and Fishers and Westfield and Zionsville figure out they're not getting their fair share of the current, there's going to be another bill coming.
Okay. I
And
need
you
to
know,
say-
also, our edit is split up according to population because they could choose to either do it that way or the certified shares. And so the city, being in charge, chose to split it up by population. And that's a huge dollar amount.
Exactly. So not only do we have the annexation, but what I'm trying to do is whet your appetite enough that you start thinking a little bit more long-term here about, again, what is happening in downtown Indianapolis with boys and girls looking at all of this stuff. They also, Jeff said he's pushing real hard to make it the county council's responsibility in all counties for all income taxes.
Yes, we're working on that.
The whole idea that, given that COIT doesn't even exist anymore, there's still this ghost of COIT in the system. I mean, that.
And ghost of edit, and
And,
ghost
yeah.
of, of
Yeah.
everything. So absolutely. So, now remember, the way I keep looking at this is no matter when we do the correctional facility or all that, I'm also wondering sometimes if I wouldn't do it sooner rather than later, before later gets worse.
You mean establish a corrections tax?
Possibly. I'm throwing it out there on the table and serving it up.
Well, one concern that we do have is, the city could max out the rate right now.
Correct.
Using the.
But I still think this was a special purpose, so I think this still could be on top of it. But also,
It's sort of, is it not sort of different? Like there's the corrections tax, which we've already put one in place, a very small one.
I thought the
and
purpose.
And that, I believe, is in the total max. But there's also that jail tax, which is not the same thing.
right, that's what I call the correctional facilities tax. So I don't want to go too deep into this yet, because again, we're 7 days away from the boys and girls going away from downtown.
Yeah.
But the results of whatever comes out of that, I also heard it was probably not going to be a study committee, because I got the funny feeling that everybody's up to their eyeballs in study committees, and they don't think study committees are working real well.
It's a way to postpone it.
And they have not for some time.
Yeah,
there's
and so I'm worried about, though, then when you take it into the deep black box and come out with new things. But so I'm telling you, you've got to be strategically aware. We've got to stay nimble, and we got to keep thinking this thing out, even if it is 3 to 5 years down the road. Okay, so
you threw a lot at us right
Yes.
there, right? And so this is how my mind's spinning, and I want to make sure it's spinning correctly, right?
Yep.
The geofencing would allow the state, and then also the county treasurer or the
basically the locals,
to determine how much income tax we're getting within political boundaries.
and as they change.
Yes.
Correct.
And so
There's the key.
the fear is that at some point in the future, and that future may be a long way away, maybe next year, whatever, that the state is going to start requiring distributions of income tax, either new. I hear you're saying they're going to start with new, but
Yes.
but it doesn't seem like too much of a leap that they would want to revisit what we already have in place,
It only takes a law change.
right? To start distributing the income based upon where you actually live. And then my mind's spinning with two thoughts based upon that. One is that is just going to give a different purpose for annexation, right?
Exactly.
You're going to start annexing based upon income as opposed to property.
That's where I'm going.
And two is, I'm trying to get my mind around it, but that was a big one. And then the other one was given that our current income tax system isn't like property tax where, I live in the city, but the county still gets a portion of my property tax. Under that regime, my income tax would go to the city and unless, again, the legislative change, and maybe we need to make sure our lobbyists are aware of this, that if they do that, they should do more of a formula like what they do with property tax. Does that make sense?
See, here's what I've heard in talking to legislators, that the model would be more like a pancake system where the county as a whole would be able to impose a tax rate, an income tax rate on the whole county.
Right.
The council, but then the city council might be able to impose an additional tax rate that would be stacked on top, and it would only go to the city and only apply to city taxpayers. Right?
And that's the new, so we're assuming your pancake is not the chocolate chips that are on the table, the chocolate chip pancake that's on the table, but it's the blueberry that comes on top. Okay, so the blueberry pancake that gets put on top of the chocolate chip, that would be the new tax in the new driving. Well, what I'm telling you, Jack, is the minute the city of Fort Wayne figures out it's got a hell of a lot more money than it's getting, and it's not getting it from Allen County, guess what the second largest city is gonna do? They're going to gripe, and they're gonna find an answer.
They're gonna wanna go after the chocolate chips.
Yes, exactly. And so, so what I'm saying now, so you say, okay, what's the impact of annexation on lit? I'm hoping, okay, no new virtual fencings occurring at the same time, because I would say, wait a minute, why don't we use the virtual fence on the new area whenever we annex? Okay, because we ought to be able to collect that money when we annex, rather than having this other funny thing. So I'm hoping when we get to 26, or what could be 27 for lit, when Jeff says it, we don't have any new rules of the ballgame. So I'm just saying, buyer beware. You gotta really be thinking about this, staying on top of it and watching it, okay? And which is what we're doing for all of our county clients and city clients all the time, okay? Because we want to be careful here. And there may be some reasons for going sooner than later, okay? And so Marty, that was a complicated answer to your edit question, but I'm just telling you that not only annexation kind of concerns the stability of that, but other things do too. Now, let me also serve a number up on the silver platter, is that your trust. Does everybody know what I mean by a trust balance at the state of Indiana?
Yes.
Okay, so all your income taxes are in a trust balance. Okay, the new numbers came out. Okay, here's where you went. You went from 21 million down to 7. You went to one of the lowest points.
What?
Yeah, you went from 22 million to 7 million.
To 7 million?
7 million. So you're at really one of the lower spots. You were 19 million, and this will all be in our sustainability room. There's all those gory details.
So no special distributions, in other words. We shouldn't expect any special distribution.
Boy, you catch on quick, John. You've been a council member for more than a month. You're right. So thank you. I was setting that up.
Is it because we put in the new corrections fund and that reduced it?
I'm not going to say that. I'm going to say maybe we thought maybe it was because of the edit and they distribute maybe a little bit too much. But the answer is your supplemental you got last year, we were kind of surprised because you were one of the lower, and your rate of growth of 3.4% in lit was lower than a lot of our county clients.
It was much lower than I expected.
Yeah, honestly. Yeah. So that's what kind of made me suspicious. And that, by the way, the trust balances just came out this week. And so I was on the phone actually on my way down here and I said, what did they publish it yet? And they did. And so number one, I'm concerned with the 2025 rate of growth. I'm concerned with the 2024 supplemental if we were counting on it. Now, what most of my county clients tell me is two things we don't want you to take into account. We don't want you to take into account supplemental, and we want you to be very careful going forward with interest income. We're suggesting that interest income, and I put it in this point here, that we will probably reduce it in 26. Okay, now, Marty, you probably talk to the Fed chairman all the time. Do you know what's going to happen with interest income?
Well, it looks to me like they're not saying they're going to reduce that interest. The
At least
interest rate.
24, right? In
I
24.
think
We're thinking we can make it through maybe 25, but 26, all bets are off. So we're taking it off. So where am I? I'm concerned supplemental lit. I'm concerned with the rate of growth of income taxes. My first earmark that, or first indication of that, I tell everybody, let's get to March. Let's see what that trust balance does, which by the way, in Hendricks County, I had a 26 million trust balance. I went to 25 million. That was normal. In Hancock, I went from 20 million to 19 million. That was normal. You guys are one of the ones that, in the powerhouse income tax people, and Hamilton's, I think, stayed the same. You guys are concerning me.
So ultimately, does that mean that incomes in the community are not high enough, that we need more economic growth as far as incomes go?
Well, I would always totally agree with that statement, and absolutely.
But that we're abnormally low, I guess.
Well, and so that might have been, they abnormally gave you too much. Now, when I talked to Jeff, Representative Thompson, they're struggling down the state that when the statute went from 6 months to 90 days, they keep struggling that maybe we're saving up too much. Okay, the state is holding back too much of your money. Now, with you going down to 7, I would say, we had some in last year that were even negative, that we were afraid we're going to have to make up. Remember, if it goes negative, they may take from your distribution.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Marty, I think you've seen that before. And so, I think they're going to have to go back. And so I got the inclination, I'm sorry, let me stay on track. I got the inclination that maybe they would go down to 30 days. I don't know if they'll do that, depending on what this whole array looks like.
So does this mean ultimately for us a shortfall or just less distribution of money as it's coming in?
That's where I'm going first, your ladder. Okay, so if in the sustainability or in your mind, we were going to, remember the growth quotient locked at 4% for property taxes. If you were saying, oh, we can make up a lot of our expenses based upon our 8% growth in lit, I'm saying, no way. You didn't have it last year. You probably, first in round of numbers are going to indicate you're not going to have it this year or next year in 2025. And remember, 2024 numbers already set. And don't expect too many pennies from heaven, which I call the supplemental. Call them pennies from heaven because they drop down. They kind of drop down out of the sky. And so, but that's where, from the county council standpoint, I keep telling you, take your time. I keep telling everybody, and I'm speaking up in Greencastle at one of the county association meetings. Take your time on your budget. Get your good numbers for lit. You already have your good numbers for property taxes. We want to talk about migration of property taxes, but we may have to migrate a little bit back to the health, but it looks strong. And so we want to take all these things into account before you go too far and too late on your budget. Okay? I think this world is making it important that you have good information. Jeff, comment, or you, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, boys and girls, but that's why we're having round one here.
That's right.
Of many rounds to
Well,
come.
I guess my initial reaction to that is if we're collecting, if our trust balance is going down, it means they overestimated what our income would be.
Bingo.
And so,
Or 18 months of lag is kind of catching up with them.
well, but at some level, it's gotta be they overestimated.
But it was something that happened here worse than in other places. That's
Yeah.
that's the question for me. I mean, if you told me everybody's trust balance went down that much, then I'd be like,
Yeah.
okay, that's the way that it works. But
The question is, and we don't have it, again, we were hoping 2 or 3 years ago, the Indiana Department of Revenue said real-time income numbers. And we said, oh my gosh, this will change the world. Okay. And here we are 2 years later, no real-time information.
So we're essentially, and again, I don't have the season that the other two counselors do. I'm trying to catch up. We're essentially talking about lit from September 2022, what we're seeing come in, as far as if we go 18 months back.
Oh, okay. The 18 months, sorry, Trent, it is where the Indiana Department of Revenue's database is working from. And remember, everybody, I'm sure everybody in Monroe County files their income taxes
April 15th.
15th. I'm sure. And I'm sure they pay everything at that point. There might be one or two that say, I'm going to file it, okay? And I'm going to admit it. And I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go for the next year and work out my income taxes. That's where the lagging data of return and return information, it's somewhat taxpayer imposed. It's somewhat, and I would also say somewhat in a transient community. I want to look at Tippecanoe counties, because sometimes college counties are different than non-college counties.
Yeah.
You with me?
Yeah.
Because, sometimes people are like, I don't have to file in Indiana. And then remember, if you earn in Indiana, but you go somewhere else and you earn also in Illinois, whatever, you got to pay on your income in Indiana.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not an income tax expert on a personal side, so please don't ask me to do your 1040. Don't do that.
This number's pretty dramatic.
Yeah. Yes.
What year was it that that they had to make up the difference because they couldn't get it done in time and it was all tied to COVID and whatever, and then that made 1 year much higher because they gave us more than the 12-month income. Remember that? And so I'm just wondering how much of a change and using those numbers carried forward and made a mess of this. And the other thing is, all of the people who received those extra checks from the government that they just kept thinking it was free, and then they had to pay taxes on it, but they didn't come up with the taxes to pay on it because they didn't save the money back. I mean, how much of that is tied to it?
The problem is, let me address her question. I don't think we really know, Marty. And because the income of everybody is very, very highly confidential. We used to, I had an IU, when I had my office down here and I had an IU assistant helping me, we went to the microfiche and got all that data, and you could get it, but in more recent, it's become more of a top secret element. So I think the answer is you really don't know. Jeff?
Yeah, I'm still just trying to think about what would make us different. And there's two things that I can think of. One is the eat it. I mean, and that was a pretty big tax increase.
Right.
So that have distorted things. And then second is apparently our economy is just not growing enough, and we need to redouble our efforts to grow the local
So
economy.
we'll pause there because again, yeah, and I think stay tuned. We'll see if we can get some more information. But I wholeheartedly agree with you. And, you know, that's where I'm thinking it is. And then I think it's overall, as Marty stated, I think it's a lot of people have to go change their tax returns, have to catch up, you know, and say, oh my gosh, you know, I forgot this income and things like that. So, you know, that's something I want to, again, just make you aware of and get your sights looking down the road, because I'm not confident we've got the earning potential coming to a theater near us as strong as we were.
So you're gonna let us know what you find as the new trust balances come out, and you will.
Oh, absolutely. We like to say, we'll raise up every stone and see what crawls out of it, you know, and see if it bites us or not.
Would it be safe to say that this makes annexation, which is obviously annually problematic, pale a little bit in comparison in the meantime?
Yeah, probably, because but it's gonna be the double whammy. Slow growth in lit, reduction due to, I thought we even put in here, we had a 3% reduction, you know, so I'm afraid it might be the potential perfect storm of a couple events hitting at the same time. Okay, where we might have thought, wow, it'd be nice if we had 6% growth in our income to offset 3% loss in annexation. We might net something in a positive. You can see the data is not suggesting that.
Going the other way.
Yeah.
Well, and I think.
Or deep breath mode, at least.
And I talked to Charlie a little bit about this yesterday, about in the last, because I was amazed, because in the last 2 or 4 months, we've issued 2 tax abatements that for over $300 million in abated taxes. But the wages from one is, I think, 250 people at 100,000 a head. So if those things come through, I guess in my mind, I'm wondering, you know, 250 million in additional income. Not all of them are going to live in the county, but let's assume. Would that help offset some of this issue?
So absolutely. But again, it will take those to probably hit 28, 27, 28.
Yeah, I mean,
but how am I sustaining my growth in Hancock County and in Hendricks, the 2 big powerhouses, as far as I'm concerned? That and Boone will come up now but it'll be lagging. They've been doing it based upon that growth in jobs. There's no doubt about it. It's, you know, and people, you know, don't like growth, but I'm telling you, it's starting to, you know, you go down to Martin County, they'd love to steal something from you.
Yes, they would.
What I remind you too is that we've got to make sure that growth stays here in Monroe County, that we're not pushing them out into the other counties. Because if we're counting on that income tax to survive, and those folks are all living someplace else because they can't find housing here in Monroe County, we are shooting ourselves in the foot.
Great.
Oh,
This is a perfect storm.
Yeah, and so what I'm here to say is team, commissioners, council, auditor, everybody, team, we got to be thinking here together and heading it as a team in the right direction, because we may have to batten down our hatch a little bit.
Well, one thing is, and this is just a commentary, I mean, what we are spending in ARPA dollars supporting our local not-for-profit communities on issues around housing and food and everything, tend to back up that there's not as much income coming in here as perhaps some people believed. I mean, that is a reality, and one thing I would love to know, if it can be explained how this rapidly went to this from our prior, as the state figures it out. And the other thing I'd ask is,
yeah, remember, again, this is just round one of the dates of, you know, potential indications on how it's going to go. And so, You know, this is the one I tell everybody, we gotta take first notice of.
Okay.
So,
And if there's mistakes or adjustments,
Yes.
I mean, that's interesting. Will be interesting to see, hopefully there.
yeah, you know, I'd be the happiest camper on earth if, you know, the 7 million went back to 20 because someone says, oops, we moved a decimal.
Which we've had before.
There's been fat
Yes,
fingers.
that
There's
has
fat
happened
fingers.
before.
I've, you know, I've done it. You know, we all do it. And so, you know, sometimes there are. So let's not be too concerned. You know, I like to use the racing analogy. The yellow light's on. Red light's not on, the green light's not on. Okay? Yellow light's on. That means caution. Okay? And because you've got income taxes that I don't like, didn't go the right way. You got a fixed growth quotient. You got interest income doing something. and here we go. And cash balances will go down, okay, by sheer fact you'll even spend the ARPA and some things like that. So, you know, that's kind of I'm trying to set it up for you as we go forward. So, you know, the need to.
And Nick, could I ask you a question? If the
Sure.
income, if the interest income is going into general, that's being collected by that edit and the ARPA, and if we figure out all of the extra funds that we're not going to be having, if we use that edit to pay back the bond for the jail, if we do that, we're going to have a lot less that we're going to draw interest from. And should we not be trying to arrive at some kind of what that difference is going to be?
So Marty, what we've told everybody this year is that the interest income, you should definitely be setting some of that aside in your rainy day fund. So that's why I said, stay tuned. We'll talk about that rainy day fund and that 10% a little bit more, because what did you tell me at the very beginning? You know, I'm all about keeping the tax rate nice and stable and continuing moving ahead. And you gotta keep an eye on that, and you gotta buffer. And I keep telling everybody, this is the time you should be putting some of that interest income aside. But also recall what I told you, had you not had that in 23, you would have probably gone down in cash balance. So you did bite a nice, you took a bite out of the apple nicely last year. And again, yellow lights on.
All right, so what's next?
So we covered several of these, and you know, Marty, when you mentioned the edit and the jail, remember, I'm still saying one of the things I want the county council to really think about would be if we would build it if we would build it next year, this year, year after, you know, ultimately, would it be better for you to do your own correctional facility tax as opposed to have edit supporting that? Okay. And the reason is then you have a dedicated tax for the dedicated bond for the life of that bond. Sure smells like, to me, it's really stable, or there's a lot better stability in that.
Or,
Okay.
or,
So go ahead.
or do we look at it that if we would, whoops, what happened?
I think somebody.
That's coming from Kim's mic. Okay. Okay, one of the reasons we looked at the edit for jail was that if we locked it in, then we felt like that there was a rule that the city couldn't take it away from us if we'd already locked it in as being obligated.
Sure. So as your CPA and your municipal security advisor, I would say I would defer that question to your attorney. That is what I'm always told. But what I'm also saying is that I think you lock at a certain percentage, like maybe 1.5, you don't lock the total rate.
Okay.
So I'm thinking very globally that if I was on the other side of the fence, I could then decrease it to a certain point and then take away your resource that you were
Okay.
using for other matters. Do you understand what I just
Okay,
said?
right.
I mean,
In other words, it's a chess game and somebody else might win.
So in other words, if we say we've got 10 million and we're gonna obligate 2 million of the 10 for bond payments.
so you're talking about the edit right now?
I bet,
Okay.
yeah. And then what I'm saying is subject to check by all the attorneys, we've got a couple of them in here and we've got all kinds of good ones everywhere. And so, can they lower it? They can't lower it below the 2. I think there's a threshold of they can't lower it below 1.25 or 1.50. And so, but they can lower it then, in theory, to 4 million. Now, if you were using in year 2 or 3, that extra 6 million, the difference between 4 and 10, okay,
All right,
just-
okay.
okay, then that goes away. Houston, I don't want you to get a problem because of that. So again, what are we doing? We're planning out.
Why would the city reduce the edit rate though?
I don't know.
I think if anything, they increase it. I'm just honestly knowing the
That's good.
personalities of the people who are in city
Okay.
council now. There's almost 0% chance they would reduce the tax.
Politically, yeah.
So politically, whatever, but the answer is, I'm not, so why would I reduce it? If right now, maybe the theory would be, let's go back to one alternative. What if I was gonna create my blueberry pancake? If I drop edit, create my new blueberry pancake of 0.5%.
Yeah, okay.
And I get to
that could
collect
happen.
it all.
You're right, that could happen.
Then guess what I'm gonna do?
You're right. If we, under that regime, they.
Because
they
then
can
I go
stick
back
with
to
it.
the taxpayer and say, I didn't change your tax rate.
Right. Yeah,
Oh,
we
wait,
get
I-
screwed, but the city, yeah, no, I.
There's my
I
speculation.
lost your blueberry. Could you repeat that? Something
Sure.
about the pen?
Yeah, so remember what we said when the state sets up the virtual fence, they're
Right,
not going to reproportion what I call the chocolate chip pancake, all of
Okay.
the current LIT. What they were going to say is we'll allow the virtual fence on the new LIT that in community, we'll leave Bloomington out of it, that the city of Fort Wayne wants to put on. So city of Fort Wayne puts on a new LIT. The city of Fort Wayne collects it because of virtual fencing. That's the blueberry pancake or the pancaking effect that Jeff explained. Okay? Now, what I'm saying is that keep in mind, if you want me to speculate, I speculated that I would go to the taxpayer and say, I'm not going to change your total LIT rate. I'm just going to create this other thing. And so don't worry, I'm not raising rates. But guess what? It may impact you versus them. Okay? Or not you versus them, but the amount you get versus they get. And Jeff, you kind of understood that then.
Yeah.
Trent, did you kind of see what I was saying?
Jeff's gonna tutor me later.
Okay.
But I'm kind of getting it.
But that is the one, you're right, that is a plausible scenario where the city council could actually reduce our taxes, yes.
Yeah, I'm hoping Marty gets that pushed and that what happens if the county council is the only one that can do a income tax?
That would be nice,
But, I'm not sure that's
Well,
happening.
And then
Right.
I guess the extension of that would be that in order for the county to be revenue neutral, they would have to increase a county-wide tax, probably by not the full amount, so the people living outside those city limits would still have a lower increase. But the people within the city limits would then income taxes would go up, right? Is that,
Well, maybe,
because we're making our own pancake that covers everything.
Right, right.
correct, yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, there will be some, or there will be some incremental impact.
Yeah.
Okay, in the speculation that we just put out.
Yes.
Okay, and keep in mind, it's speculation, but I'm just trying to.
I'm making sure I'm following.
Yeah, yeah. So then when we go back to here, I think the question that's going to be on the horizon, no doubt about it, is the wage increase and how you move forward in 25 and 26. We got to be very careful. Okay, I think.
Yes.
And so I think the sustainability already showed you that. And I don't think there's that third bullet from the point. I'm telling you, the self-insurance fund, have you guys when does the renewal come up for your insurance?
Annual. Are we talking about health insurance?
Health insurance.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we do it. We get it discussed and negotiated before open enrollment, so we usually do it in the fall.
Okay.
But we've been told maybe you're the one that told us and warned us about this, that we need to look out in maybe even like 26, where it's really going to hit us, where so many people during COVID wasn't staying up with their health needs. And then we're going to see a huge increase. And perhaps even if you just see one or two big things with our self-insurance, we could be in real trouble there. I think that I might have been listening to you.
You were, and I'm hearing that more now in reality. Again, some of them are saying no increase, not a problem, but even the AIM trust fund, it went up quite a bit, and for cities. So I feel, and I keep hearing, it's coming, and it's coming stronger than it has in the past. So keeping that self-insurance, I mean, in Hancock County, I moved 500,000 the other day, and I've got, in both Hendricks and Hancock, I've got well over 3 million now set aside, and yours isn't that big. It's 1 point something, if I remember. So, let's see, it's health, it's in your fund report.
It's Fund 4,700, if that helps.
Yeah, the problem is mine didn't print off with the numbers. And I don't know why that didn't work that way. It didn't get the fund numbers on it.
Oh.
Yeah, so it made it kind of tough.
Number is this one?
Here it is. What number, Jeff?
4,700 is what you had on your sheet.
4,700 has 1.2 million in it. I thought so. So, I've had some $1 million problems that have come up. Where's your stop loss?
I think it's 125, isn't it?
Okay. And do you have any current carve outs? Anyone that's been lasered out
Not that I'm aware
due to
of.
health benefits? Okay, excessive.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, somebody's staying on top of that?
That was a discussion Ian and I had just a couple days ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so keeping a real close eye on that, because that'll affect your renewal and the potential increase we see there. Because if we saw a 10% increase in that line, then we're going to have something to talk about, right? And I'm hearing someone's coming.
Yeah.
So,
Huge.
could be. So I think at this point in time, that was the major bulleted points that I had that I wanted to address with you on round one. And then reviewing, you're supposed to, as Jeff knows from the ratings call, the council should be reviewing the revenue report, the appropriations report, and the fund balance report each and every month. And we're suggesting that the location budget report and the percent spent of budget after the first quarter, which is, here we are coming to a theater near us, at least soon, January, February, March. After that, we get the first indication about what kind of spend level are we on some of these? And then the 6/30 will be the most important. But that's what you're supposed to monitor each and every month in your council meetings. And a lot of council will do that first thing in the meeting. Let's look at our cash balances. How are we doing? And they run through them. And I have one council member, like in Hancock, I have Jim Shelby. He's vigilant about it, brings it up, takes about 5 minutes of each of the council members' meetings and runs through it.
And so would that be presented then? It seems to me the auditor should have those numbers and present them to us at the beginning of each meeting. And we should not just fly right over that like it doesn't make a difference. I mean, it can be on, in any kind of a list where we could look anytime we wanted to. However, we need to see it in a public meeting.
Each meeting or
Monthly.
Okay, so it could be, I mean, we really, this is maybe more of a philosophical thing that's beyond the scope of this meeting, but we had to move work sessions back to being work sessions and not do appropriations and transfers and that sort of thing for the work sessions anymore. People just have to wait until the regular meeting.
Well, you've got a $50 to $100 million business. You got to run it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a big business.
It is, and I in theory, I appreciate and agree with that, Jeff. The issue is the business is demanding to get that into it, and work sessions truly became not work sessions.
But we can also do, we could do a consent agenda for all the transfers and all the creating budget lines and crap like that. Just put everything but appropriations on a consent agenda, take one vote, we approve it all, and then.
Yes.
You could.
I've been asking for that for a long time, and people say, well, they don't like what. We also don't like 4-hour meetings, so.
I agree. If counselors, and I'm gonna pass this back to other counselors, if counselors will, in philosophy, agree to that and execute that, where it's not me making that decision.
You're right.
Because what happens is every counselor is detailing their own detailing shop, and it's killing us on time.
You're 100% right.
100%. So I'm going to put that back to other counselors.
Yeah, obviously I have no comment. That's yours.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to take
No, it is a good point, because we can't get to discussions like this where.
We're exhausted after we've already heard every single health department grant and transfer.
Yeah, which is important, but there's maybe a way we can do that, so.
And you've got a lot of business management to run.
Yeah.
So,
very good point.
So I guess at this point, I'll open it up for further questions. That's kind of the bulleted points that I wanted to serve up as round one of many rounds to come here. But, I think the importance is here.
So, so what's the next step as far as your sustainability analysis?
Well, so we're getting the numbers from the auditor's office, and we'll be updating that. But your assumptions that you want us to do for wage increases is, when 80% of all of our expenses are driven by wages.
Yeah.
There's the answer. I need your guidance, because I can put guidance in there, but, I need your guidance.
Well, we have a policy, or at least a long-time practice, that we at least look at the Midwest CPI from the previous 12 months, from the December to December. That's a reasonable assumption for.
So what is it?
3.2%.
There you go. You got it up. I knew you. I looked over there and I saw a matrix, and I was like, wait a minute, Jeff's baiting me on this question.
I'm just saying, that may not be where we wind up, but it's as reasonable as the most objective place to start that I can think of.
Don't pinpoint it at any certain month, because I've had people say, well, last December was 8. Well, wait a minute.
We've always done calendar years.
Yeah, that's why we do the whole.
Smooth it out.
Yeah, that's why we do the whole.
February's better.
So yes, my best estimate would be 3 to 4% at this point in time, given from the revenue side.
Well,
And I'm gonna cross my fingers and my toes on that one. You can see why.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly where the numbers would, where the CPI would send us. Yeah, we had 2 really bad years of high inflation that show up in the CPI. And
Yeah,
it took everything we had, obviously.
Now, I still say that doesn't, my chicken at Kroger's, in my avocados, and I try and eat healthy, my spinach, isn't 3.4%. It's a hell of a lot more than that. And if I go out to eat, it's a hell of a lot more than that. But there's no, I call it Greg's real market basket of inflation. It's up there, it's staying up there, but we can't chase it. I don't think there's no way. You don't have the revenue. I don't think right now you have the product delivering enough revenue to get there. And, it's likely cash balances will maintain or decrease as we go a little bit.
We did in the last budget, we worked hard with other elected officials and departments to do what we did. But we do have the realities. I think Jeff's talking about the CPI index is a strong indicator of where to look and try to figure this out as we move forward. I have to say, I appreciate this meeting more than anything because it's giving me the appropriate amount of ulcers moving forward.
That's not helping me any.
Well, I mean, it's helping me to know what the doctor's visit discussion will be, but on a serious note, I think that the entire purpose of this committee was to soberly go through this before we get into a wide council meeting in August and say, hey, there's Greg, let's see what's going on, and put a pause on our meeting.
Right.
This is what we need to talk about.
Yeah, and I can't bring you up to date and give you the facts and the figures and all the information I'm looking at in 15 minutes in a council meeting about what are we gonna get.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. And it's been kind of a tough road. And I'm more than happy for people to challenge me and say, well, you didn't look at this, you didn't look at that. You want to bat? But push back at any point in time because, but we are, this is what we specialize in.
It's real. This is real.
Yeah. So.
I do have one more question, and this is based on a comment that was left on.
Before we go there, so you were at 3.4?
Yeah, 3.2, I think is what,
Okay,
what did I say? 3.2. And that's literally, I'm not saying this is where we wind up. That is just as objective a number as we can have that is based on past practice.
Sorry, I
No,
your question there, but your question is?
Yeah. It was based on a comment on one of the previous reports, and it was a suggestion that we look at Cume Cap and possibly move Cume Bridge, and possibly move some levy out of that to one of the other, probably general.
Yeah, so when a council asked me that, I said, okay, now remember, you're putting me between commissioners and council. Okay. And so I cautiously say, right now, the major bridge, it's 3.33 pennies. It is outside your maximum levy. Let's not worry about that. Cume Bridge, you've got 2.1 pennies. That is in your maximum levy. Okay. The way I like to say Cume Bridge, in my growing counties, I say, keep our 2.1 pennies. Let's not let it go down. Let's not reauthorize it. Because remember, they can reauthorize it to almost 10 cents, I think. And your general fund would go down quickly. Yeah. So I look at what is our growth in our AV? Can we, in my growth counties, I'm getting a nice growth in Cume Bridge levy by maintaining my 2.1 pennies. I have not analyzed your growth from 23 to 24, but if we are meeting our needs via Lisa with some growth, then I'm going to say maybe what the best thing to do is keep that at 2.13 pennies. Don't decrease, don't increase, and let the rate of growth of AV bring in more money to it. You with me?
Mhm.
And so, but I have not analyzed that, and then I always go, but that's where we need Lisa. She's supposed to have a 10-year, I'm sure she does, a 10-year bridge plan, and she can tell us how we're keeping up, you know? And so that's one of those that what we do is in other counties, we bring our county engineer in, say, let's take a little deep dive into our Hume Bridge. How are we looking? Okay, and let's do a little micromanagement of that before I give the patient a diagnosing on that. Okay, but I like to sustain my 2 point, because I don't like to decrease it. That only play catch up. Now, do you put interest income back in the Q Bridge?
Did you which?
I'm not sure on that one. I got to look into it.
Okay, do we put interest income back in Q Bridge?
No, I don't, I think they were even taking, I don't think they do, but anyway. When you get through talking about that, also talk about our stormwater, because I think that also sort of affects that whole big picture. And we're going to be losing a lot of revenue in stormwater with the annexation, because we'll only be receiving dollars within our own footprint. And so my concern is we've got a lot of people that's counting in the highway, put all those funds together, and then we're not going to have that money in stormwater.
Okay. I really haven't dissected that at this point, Marty. And so, but that's good to know. Okay.
It's huge, and they even put some of the major equipment and put it in the stormwater and paid that out. And that means that everybody in the entire county is paying for the equipment for the stormwater fund. And I think at some point in time, somebody's going to say you can't do that. But I think we've got a lot of people who are planning big plans for that stormwater fund that money's not going to be there. And so I mentioned that when we're talking about the Cume Bridge, even though Cume Bridge is within that frozen levee, stormwater's out. And we have some salaries also in Cume Bridge.
Yeah, so what I'm saying there is that number one, if we're not putting interest income there, when I have my discussion with my county engineer, that may be something I'm even willing to do, is let the Cume Bridge during good times keep its interest income, let it build up if it needs to build up by that also. Okay, and then strategically, when times get tough, you got a place to go back to, right? Jeff, was that part of what you were thinking or wanting to talk about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
well,
it sounds like we would need to involve, we would need to have a more detailed conversation with Lisa.
And your election and registration is up to 1.4 million levy in 2024. I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's the other one.
Presidential.
Yeah, I'm assuming that'll come away next year for 2025.
There's no election.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It should be. I mean, we're going to have to hold the line on that. Because most recently we've had budget requests for non-election years that are almost as high as.
Is that for equipment or people?
A little of both.
Okay, I've got one county that many years ago created a Cume election fund for equipment, and they set aside each and every year an amount and for leasing and for the equipment, and they don't have these ebbs and flows. You have the right to create a Cume election fund or voter equipment fund.
Is that inside of a cap any place?
Yes, it would be. Unfortunately, it's not outside, but you know, my point is if we take the 1.4 million of levy that you're allocating there and we right size it for 25, but we reproportion in 25 too, maybe that would help it the next time. You all with me? Jeff, thoughts there?
We had it set up so that we would figure out what the total is that we would need for the presidential election and then split that up for 4 years and try to keep it even. But for some reason or the other, I think the auditor's office removed some of that so that it wasn't growing like we wanted it to. So it'd be ready for the presidential election and we wouldn't see a big bump.
Yeah,
Is that as you recall, Jeff?
Yeah, yes, that's exactly. When we created the election fund, we created it almost to be to act like a cum fund,
Okay.
even though it wasn't
Right.
technically. But we have, and to some degree, I think I agree with you that that's been an auditor's position that we should have only one savings account, and so essentially it's been treated like any other
So then
liquidity fund.
we need to do a little bit of research on it and see where it is. And you know, is it right sized or not? Especially with our new auditor. So,
But yeah, that may, for this budget, this may be an opportunity to save some money and have some revenue to put into rainy day.
yeah,
if we're
because
able to.
my assumption is you will not need as much for 2025.
That's certainly the way it should be.
Okay.
They are talking about switching us to a vote center model, which there's some technology, but I don't think it's, well, the estimate is.
And I thought there was a state grant coming for that too.
I think there is.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll apply for every grant we can.
But we'll see what they come up with, right? Or not.
Okay.
And also, are they not, did that bill pass where they're extending by 1 more year, the levy growth to 4%? I think that passed maybe just yesterday.
Well, so it was set for 2 years at 4%. I didn't know anybody that was changing that. Yeah.
I thought Jeff Thompson.
No, what that one
Extended.
was with Jeff was that if you went for a appeal, that the appeal would numbers would go up and it would cut out about 50% of the appeals wouldn't have been valid last year. So it's your excess levy appeal, not the 4% minimum growth or maximum growth quotient. And we didn't appeal last year for a growth quotient.
No.
Or excess levy. I don't think we had the right to. So that's what I believe was the issue, and that's what he was addressing, Marty.
Okay.
So, and I just, I appreciate Jeff having lunch with me and filling me in. It's very helpful. I used to do it with Jeff and Bob Cherry. But, Jeff's in my county Hendricks.
Well, Jeff Thompson is the one who met with me several times to understand why our special purpose tax should not be included in with the rest of the income tax that they were making decisions about. So that what we called here our juvenile income tax, we were not really charging juveniles, but.
Yeah, well, and you did a good job on that, Marty, because I probably will do the same thing in Tippecanoe County because I'm building a juvenile center up there. So anything else? Auditor, welcome aboard, by the way. Anybody else?
I look forward to seeing you next time.
No?
As long as you quit making me have ulcers, I'll see you next time.
Well,
Bipartisan ulcers in this room.
okay, I'll
That's
try
always
and
good.
bring you one good thing then.
Hey, we went
Now,
from a
remember-
double A minus to a
Yeah,
double
that's
A.
a good thing. That's
Yeah,
a very
that-
good thing.
Yes.
We just
That
need
was
to
the-
keep it and go
That was
to
the
double
first
plus.
note. We started off on a positive note,
Yes.
and we've got good momentum. We just got to keep it.
That's right.
You got to work it. So,
Anything else? And thank you. This is awesome. This is
Well, thanks,
incredible. I feel the most informed, and again, those ulcers are informing me too. But this is exactly why we did this, and I appreciate it very much. And I'll be digesting this for some time. So thank you. We do have. I need to approve minutes, but I do. it's important. I do want to make sure, counselors, any other comments, questions, things as we're moving forward you wanted to say at this point?
Well, I guess what I'd like to say is for the next meeting of this body, I would like us to consider draft versions of all these target fund balance resolutions and any other resolutions that we should be considering. We can discuss them in this committee and then they go to the full council
Right,
for discussion.
right. Thanks.
We can give a do not pass recommendation to help the counselors with that. They will look to this committee for that.
So that's, we can have those ahead of time and actually.
Sure.
Okay.
And so, Molly, council, you can assist with all that.
Molly, council.
Molly, council. Our council.
When is your next meeting?
Should we schedule one?
Let's
We
do
don't
that.
have
This
one.
committee, we have,
Of this committee, we were talking about maybe in April. I will need a subject to date because I keep my electronic now at the office and because my schedule is changing a lot. And so it was supposed to be kind of a little bit later in April. So if you give me a suggested date, I can check it even today.
How about everybody 19th or 26th? What was better?
What days are those?
Fridays.
Okay, so I'll say, why don't you put that as a jump ball, the 19th or the 26th?
Okay.
And if those both work for you guys, I can get back with you on one of those.
All right, we will hold those.
And Marty, we want to see your smiling face here.
I beg pardon? Oh, okay. Are you going to be giving the budget lessons at the separate meetings, at the AIC meetings?
I'm going to be teaching the one in Greencastle.
Okay, that's fine. I'd like to go to that one, but so far that's not working out for me. But
It's March 19th.
but we can pay to get updates on that. We can go ahead and listen in on that, the recorded session of it. And I want to make sure that I get on the one that you're going to be presenting, because by that time, state will be done doing their work. What's the Greencastle date?
That March 19th is the one they wanted me to do a couple of them. I'm just too swamped. Too many counties, too much things going on, so.
Okay, so if I say I want the Greencastle one, I can get a recording of it. Thanks a bunch.
You should, yeah. Okay.
Everybody, all the council members should be watching that.
Okay.
So, did we satisfy everything you need? Council, you good too?
Yes.
All right, counselors, if there's no other comments, how about those minutes, February 9th, 2024? I'm looking for approval of that.
Move, we approve.
A motion and a second. All those.
Yeah, you gotta roll call.
Oh.
Hybrid rules.
Yes, that's right.
Sorry.
So with that, let's, any discussion, none. Let's move on to a roll call vote.
Counselor Deckard,
Yes.
Counselor Hawk,
Yes.
Counselor McKim.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous.
Awesome. Anything else, friends? All right, we will stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Molly, if